Pack your shit, Hayes. You're fired. The words echoed across the entire dock floor. 47 workers froze mid-shift as Marcus Webb, clipboard in hand, pointed at the door like he was directing traffic. Daniel Hayes didn't beg, didn't argue. He opened his locker, peeled off the photograph of his 2 kids, and walked out in complete silence while his coworkers watched. His truck hadn't even cleared the harbor gates when the emergency sirens started wailing. 28 minutes later, 2 Blackhawks dropped from the sky with enough rotor wash to rip the close signs off the fence, and a Navy commander in dress whites stepped onto the dock, asking one question that made Webb's face drain of color. Where the hell is Chief Petty Officer Daniel Hayes? Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches, and smash that subscribe button, because what happens next proves why you never fire the only man who actually knows how things work. You're the problem, Hayes. Marcus Webb didn't even look up from his tablet. Just said it, right there, in front of everyone. Daniel Hayes stood at Station 7, grease on his hands, diagnostic screen glowing behind him. He'd been running a compression test on a trawler engine. Delicate work. The kind that required patience. The kind Webb didn't believe in. Excuse me? Daniel's voice was calm. Too calm. Webb finally looked up. 32 years old, designer glasses, tie that cost more than Daniel's truck payment. 6 months on the job, and absolutely certain he understood how harbors worked. Your station, lowest throughput in the facility. Again. Webb tapped his screen like he was swatting flies. You're killing our metrics. Around them, the morning shift had gone quiet. 47 workers pretending to focus on their jobs while their ears bent toward the conversation happening at Station 7. Those metrics, Daniel said slowly, don't measure whether the boat sinks. They measure profit, which is what keeps this place running. What keeps this place running is boats that don't come back in pieces. Webb's jaw tightened. I've been patient with you, Hayes. I've explained the new protocols. I've shown you the data. But you keep doing things your way, and your way is slow. My way is safe. Your way is outdated. The word hung in the air like a slap. Daniel set down his diagnostic probe. Carefully. The way you set down something that might break if you're not careful with it. That trawler you're looking at? Daniel gestured to the vessel behind him. Captain Morrison. Runs a crew of 8, 3 kids under 10 between them. Last winter, I found a stress fracture in the prop shaft that your previous efficiency expert told him to ignore. You know what happens if that shaft snaps at sea? Webb didn't answer. The prop tears through the hull. The boat floods. 8 men in the water. Maybe the Coast Guard gets there in time. Maybe they don't. But hey, at least we save 4 hours on the repair timeline, right? That's exactly the point. Daniel's voice never rose. Never had to. You want to talk about metrics? Here's one. Station 7 hasn't had a vessel return with critical failure in 3 years. Not one. You want to know why? Because you take twice as long as everyone else. Because I take the time it needs to be done right. Webb stepped closer. And that's why you're fired. The words cut through the machinery noise like a gunshot. Someone dropped a wrench. The clang echoed in the sudden silence. Daniel stared at Webb. What did you say? You heard me. Webb raised his voice now, making sure everyone heard. Making an example. Effective immediately, you're no longer employed by Maritime Solutions Group. Clear out your locker. Tommy Chen, one of the younger mechanics Daniel had trained, stepped forward. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. He's the best mechanic we have. He's a bottleneck. Webb turned to address the whole crew now. And this company doesn't have room for people who can't keep up with modern efficiency standards. Daniel didn't move, just stood there, hands still dirty from the work he'd been doing. the work he'd been doing for 15 years. "Daniel," Tommy tried again. "This is bullshit." "It's fine," Daniel said quietly. "It's not fine." "Yes, it is." Daniel looked at Tommy, really looked at him. "It's his facility, his call." He walked to his locker. The sound of his boots on concrete was the only noise in the entire building. Behind him, someone cursed. Someone else said they should all walk out. A third voice said this was wrong, all wrong. But nobody moved. They had families, mortgages, car payments, kids who needed braces and college funds. Daniel understood. He'd been there. His locker was in the back, away from the main floor. He'd kept it that way deliberately. Never needed to be center stage. Inside, 2 spare work shirts, a coffee mug with a crack in the handle, half a pack of gum, and the photograph. Taped to the inside of the door. Emma and Liam, 2 summers ago, State Fair. Emma laughing, holding an oversized stuffed bear she'd won. Liam, with cotton candy smeared across his chin, grinning like he'd discovered gold. Their mother had left when Liam was 3, couldn't handle being married to a man who had no ambition. She'd wanted someone who chased promotions and corner offices. Daniel had wanted to fix engines and come home to his kids. She got the ambition she wanted, just with someone else. He got full custody and a mortgage he could barely afford. Never regretted it once. Daniel peeled the photograph off carefully. The tape had been there so long it left a mark. He folded the photo and slipped it into his shirt pocket, right over his heart. When he turned around, half the crew was standing there. Tommy in front, eyes red, fists clenched. "This is wrong," Tommy said. "It's business. It's stupid. You trained most of us. You taught me everything I know. Then you'll be fine." "No," Tommy's voice cracked. "No, we won't. When something complicated comes in, when the diagnostics don't make sense, when the manual doesn't have the answer, we come to you. What are we supposed to do now?" Daniel put a hand on the kid's shoulder. "You figure it out, or you call someone who knows better. Either way, it's not my problem anymore." He picked up his toolbox. His father's toolbox, actually. 38 years old. Scratched initials on the side. J.H. Joseph Hayes. Died when Daniel was 19. Left in the toolbox in a piece of advice. A man who can fix things will never be useless. Turned out, that wasn't quite true. Daniel walked back through the facility one last time. Past the hydraulic press, where he'd taught Tommy how to fabricate custom gaskets. Past the welding station, where he'd shown 3 different crews how to properly seal a cracked engine block. Past the diagnostic bay, where he'd spent countless nights troubleshooting problems that manuals said were impossible. Webb was still standing on the main floor, on his phone now, probably already reporting the efficiency improvement to corporate. He didn't look up as Daniel passed. Outside, the fog was burning off. Going to be a hot day. Clear skies. Good for the boats heading out. Good for the captains who trusted that the work done on their vessels would keep them alive. Daniel set his toolbox in the bed of his truck. 1987 Ford F-150. Faded blue paint. 230,000 miles. Ran like a dream because he'd rebuilt the engine himself 6 years ago, when money was tight, and his kids were young enough to think watching Dad fix a truck was better than cartoons. He sat in the driver's seat. Didn't start the engine right away. Just sat there. 15 years gone in one conversation. His phone buzzed. Text from Emma. "Dad, I need $40 for the field trip next week. Also, Liam's being annoying." He typed back. "Liam's always annoying. That's his job. I'll have the money." Emma. "You're the best. Love you." He stared at those 3 words. Love you. Worth more than any efficiency metric Webb could dream up. Daniel started the truck. It coughed once, then settled into its familiar rumble. As he pulled out, he glanced in the rear-view mirror. Webb stood at the supervisor's office window, watching him leave. Daniel didn't wave, just drove. The phone on Webb's desk started ringing 18 minutes later. He was in the middle of an email to corporate. Subject line, Q2 efficiency improvements, personnel optimization. The kind of language that looked good in reports. The phone kept ringing. Webb, Marcus, we have a situation. Janet from the front office. Her voice had an edge that made him sit up straight. Navy vessel just docked. Emergency status. Webb grabbed his tablet. Navy contracts meant good money. The kind that made quarterly reports shine. What's the issue? Engine control failure. Critical. They're saying mission deadline is 4 hours. 4 hours? That's tight but manageable. Who's available? Everyone's available. But Marcus, Janet paused. They're saying this isn't a standard system. What do you mean? Military grade, advanced propulsion, encrypted diagnostics. The guys are looking at it now and they don't know where to start. Webb was already moving. The Navy vessel sat at the emergency berth. Sleek, aggressive lines. Everything about it screamed expensive and important. A cluster of mechanics stood near the engine access panel, staring at screens displaying information in formats none of them recognized. Talk to me, Webb said. Tommy looked up. His face was pale. This is bad. Define bad. This system is about a decade beyond anything we normally touch. It's got military encryption, security lockouts, hybrid propulsion algorithms that I can't even pronounce. We can't access the failure codes without clearance we don't have. So bypass it. Bypass it? Tommy's voice climbed an octave. With what? We don't have the training. We don't have the tools. We don't have... He stopped. Webb knew what was coming. We don't have Hayes. Hayes is not the only competent mechanic in this facility. For this? Tommy pointed at the vessel. Yeah, he actually is. Was. Whatever. A voice cut through the conversation. You the facility manager? Webb turned. A naval officer approached. Crisp uniform. Command presence that made civilians straighten their spines without thinking about it. Name tag, C.D.R. Morrison. Yes, sir. Marcus Webb. We're assessing the situation and working on a solution. How long? I'm sorry? How long until my vessel is operational? I need a number. Webb glanced at Tommy, who was studiously examining his boots. We're determining that now. Morrison's expression didn't change. That's not an answer. Can you fix this or not? Silence. Morrison's eyes went cold. I was told this facility could handle advanced marine systems. We can. We absolutely can. We just need to... Commander! A younger officer approached, holding a tablet. I ran the facility records, cross-checked with our personnel database. Morrison took the tablet, read. His jaw tightened. Then he looked at Webb with an expression that could freeze antifreeze. You had a Chief Petty Officer Daniel Hayes on staff, former Navy Aviation Electronics Specialist, Combat Systems Certified, specialized in tactical propulsion override, security clearance active. Morrison's voice went very quiet, very controlled. Where is Chief Petty Officer Hayes? Webb's mouth went dry. Where? Morrison repeated, each word sharp as broken glass. Is Hayes? Tommy spoke up. He fired him half an hour ago." The words landed like a bomb. Morrison turned slowly, looked at Webb the way a surgeon looks at a tumor. "You fired him." "It was an operational decision based on efficiency." "Efficiency?" Morrison stepped closer. "You fired the only man in this facility with the clearance and expertise to fix my vessel because of efficiency?" "I didn't know he had military—" "You didn't know." Morrison's voice could cut steel. "You didn't know what you had. You didn't know what you needed. You didn't know that the one person who could save your ass just walked out your door." Webb tried to speak. Failed. Morrison pulled out his phone. Dialed. "This is Commander Morrison. Authorization Delta 79er. I need immediate aerial transport for priority personnel retrieval. 2 birds. Full authorization." He hung up, looked at Tommy. "The man who was fired. Hayes. Where does he live?" Tommy gave an address. Morrison nodded once. "You're coming with me." "What's happening?" Webb managed to ask. Morrison didn't answer him. From somewhere distant, growing louder every second, came a sound that made every person in the harbor stop what they were doing. The deep, rhythmic thunder of helicopter rotors. Not 1, 2. Blackhawks. Military. And they were coming in fast and low. The kind of approach that said this wasn't a request or a courtesy. This was an emergency retrieval. Tommy looked at Webb. "You just fired the only man who could save this contract." The helicopters appeared over the waterline, black against blue sky, rotors beating the air like war drums. Webb watched them come, watched his career implode in real time. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered what he'd known the moment Morrison said Hayes' name. He'd just made the worst decision of his life. The helicopters descended, and the entire harbor watched the sky fall. The first Black Hawk touched down in the employee parking lot with enough force to crack the asphalt. The second hovered overhead, rotors screaming, creating a windstorm that sent loose papers and plastic cups flying across the entire facility. Webb had to shield his eyes against the debris. Morrison didn't flinch, just strode toward the first helicopter as the side door slid open. He turned back to Tommy. "You're with me. Now." Tommy looked at Webb, then back at Morrison. Then he ran. Webb found his voice. "Wait, you can't just—" "I can." Morrison didn't slow down. "Federal Emergency Authority. Your facility failed to provide critical services. We're retrieving qualified personnel." "This is private property!" Morrison stopped, turned. The look on his face could have stripped paint. "Son, I've got a vessel that needs to be operational in 3 hours and 40 minutes for a mission that you don't have clearance to know about. Your property rights ended the moment you fired the only man who can make that happen." He climbed into the helicopter. Tommy followed. The door slid shut. Both Blackhawks lifted simultaneously, banking hard to the east. The rotor wash knocked over a stack of oil drums near the gate. Nobody moved to pick them up. They just stood there, 46 workers watching 2 military helicopters disappear over the harbor like something out of a movie. Except this wasn't a movie. This was real. And Webb had just lost control of everything. Inside the lead helicopter, Tommy had to yell over the engine noise. "Where does Hayes usually go after work?" Morrison spoke into his headset. Address was 1723 Pinewood Drive, residential area, east side. "He won't be home yet," Tommy shouted. "He just left. Probably stopped for coffee. There's a place he goes, corner of Maritime and 5th. Morrison relayed the information to the pilot. The helicopter banked again, harder this time. Tommy gripped the safety harness. He'd never been in a helicopter before. Never thought he'd be in one chasing down his former boss, because the Navy needed him bad enough to scramble military assets. "How long have you worked with Hayes?" Morrison asked. 3 years. He trained me, taught me everything worth knowing. He's good? He's the best I've ever seen. Patient, never cuts corners. You ask him a question, he doesn't just give you the answer. He shows you why it's the answer. Tommy paused. Your guy Webb fired him because he's too thorough. Morrison's expression went dark. Webb's not my guy. Webb's an idiot who's about to learn a very expensive lesson. Through the window, Tommy could see the coffee shop coming up. Small place, local. The kind that still wrote your name on the cup wrong even after you'd been going there for 15 years. And there, in the parking lot, was Daniel's faded blue F-150. There, Tommy pointed. That's his truck. The pilot brought the Black Hawk down in the middle of Maritime Avenue. Cars screeched to stops. People jumped out with phones raised, recording. The second helicopter stayed airborne, circling. Morrison was out before the skids fully touched pavement. Tommy scrambled after him. Through the coffee shop window, they could see Daniel sitting at a corner table. Coffee in front of him, untouched. He was staring at the photograph of his kids. Morrison pushed through the door. The bell chimed. Everyone in the shop turned to look at the naval commander in dress whites, who'd just walked in like he owned the place. Daniel looked up slowly. His expression didn't change. Didn't show surprise or confusion. Just that same calm that Tommy had seen when Webb fired him. The calm of a man who'd stopped being surprised by anything. Morrison walked to his table. Chief Petty Officer Daniel Hayes? Daniel set the photograph down carefully. That was a long time ago, Commander. Not according to our records. Your clearance is still active. Your certifications are current. Certifications don't mean much when you're unemployed. About that. Morrison pulled out a chair, sat down without asking. I need you to come back to the harbor. No. The word was simple. Final. Morrison leaned forward. I've got a vessel with critical engine failure. Advanced propulsion system. Encrypted diagnostics. Mission deadline in 3.5 hours. And I'm told you're the only man within 200 miles who can fix it. Then you should have shown up 45 minutes ago, before I got fired. I heard about that. Good news travels fast. Hayes, Morrison's voice dropped. I'm not asking as a favor. I'm asking because 8 sailors are depending on that vessel to complete a mission that has national security implications you don't have clearance to know about. Daniel picked up his coffee, took a sip, set it back down. Commander, with all due respect, that's not my problem. I don't work there anymore. I can change that. No, you can't. You can order me back to the facility. You can probably even invoke some emergency authority clause that says I have to comply. But you can't make me work for a company that values spreadsheets over safety. What if you didn't work for them? Daniel finally looked interested. Explain. Independent contractor, Navy contract, direct hire. You fix my vessel, you bill us directly, and that facility gets nothing except the privilege of having you work on their property for the next 3 hours. And after? After, you tell them to go to hell if you want. But right now, I need you. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Outside, both helicopters sat idling in the middle of the street. Traffic had backed up for blocks. People were recording on their phones. Somewhere, a police siren started wailing. What's the pay? Daniel asked. Morrison named a figure. Daniel raised an eyebrow. For 3 hours' work? For 3 hours of work that nobody else can do. Plus hazard pay. Plus emergency authorization bonus. Morrison slid a tablet across the table. Contract's already drawn up. Sign it, you're working for the United States Navy. Don't sign it. I've got 8 sailors who might not make their mission window. Daniel looked at Tommy. You knew about this? Tommy shook his head. Found out when you did. I'm just here because I know where you get coffee. Smart kid. You taught me. Daniel looked at the contract on the tablet, read through it, took his time. Morrison didn't rush him. Finally, Daniel picked up the stylus. I have conditions. Name them. I work alone. No interference. No shortcuts. If I say something's not safe, it doesn't happen. Agreed. And when I'm done, I want 5 minutes alone with the man who fired me. Morrison almost smiled. I think that can be arranged. Daniel signed the contract. Morrison stood. We need to move. Now. They walked out of the coffee shop together. The barista stood behind the counter with her mouth open. She'd served Daniel coffee every morning for 3 years and never once seen him arrive in a military helicopter. Outside, a crowd had gathered, phones everywhere. Someone was live streaming. Someone else was yelling questions that nobody answered. Daniel stopped at his truck, pulled out his toolbox. Morrison gestured to the helicopter. We'll transport that. No. Daniel's grip on the handle was firm. This goes where I go. They loaded the toolbox into the Blackhawk. Daniel climbed in. Tommy sat across from him. As the helicopter lifted, Daniel looked down at the coffee shop, at his truck in the parking lot, at the life he'd been living 30 minutes ago. Then they banked toward the harbor, and everything else fell away. The flight took 4 minutes. They came in fast and low over the facility. Every worker in the yard stopped to watch. 2 military helicopters returning, and this time everyone could see who was inside. The lead Blackhawk sat down in the same spot it had left, right in front of the main entrance. The second stayed airborne. Daniel was out before the rotors stopped spinning. Webb stood near the entrance, face pale, hands shaking slightly. Daniel walked past him without a word. Morrison followed. Tommy brought up the rear, carrying Daniel's toolbox like it was made of gold. The Navy vessel sat at the emergency berth, sleek and deadly, and completely dead in the water. Daniel approached it the way a surgeon approaches an operating table. Calm, focused, already running diagnostics in his head. Morrison gestured to the engine access panel. It's all yours, Chief. Daniel set down his toolbox, opened it. Inside, tools that had been handed down from his father, tools he'd used for 15 years, tools that Webb had dismissed as outdated. He pulled out a diagnostic probe, connected it to the vessel's system. The screens lit up with encrypted data that looked like gibberish to everyone else. To Daniel, it was a language he'd learned in the Navy 20 years ago. He worked in silence for 3 minutes, checking systems, cross-referencing failure codes, building a mental map of what had gone wrong. Finally, he stood up. The digital choke protocol is creating a feedback loop in the hybrid drive. Someone tried to override it manually, which triggered the security lockout. Morrison nodded. Can you fix it? Yes, but it's going to require bypassing the safety interlocks, which means manual control for about 90 seconds while the system reboots. If anything goes wrong in that window, the entire propulsion system could cascade fail. How dangerous? If it cascades, engine fire, potential explosion, complete system loss. Morrison didn't hesitate. Do it. Daniel looked at him. You trust me that much? I trust your record, and I trust that you wouldn't be here if you didn't know exactly what you're doing. Daniel almost smiled. Smart man. He went back to work. The facility had gone completely quiet. Workers who'd been there when Daniel got fired now watched him work on a vessel worth more than the entire yard. Webb stood at a distance, pale and silent. Tommy moved closer. Need anything? Clear the area, 20-foot radius. If this goes wrong, I don't want anyone else getting hurt. Tommy started moving people back. Daniel's hands moved with practiced precision, disconnecting safety interlocks, rerouting power flow, building a manual bypass that would give him 90 seconds of control before the automated systems came back online. 15 years, a voice said behind him. Daniel didn't turn around. He knew that voice. Webb. 15 years you worked here, Webb continued, and you never told anyone you had military clearance, that you'd worked on advanced systems. You never asked. Daniel kept working. You just looked at throughput numbers and decided I was the problem. I made a mistake. Yes, you did. I'm sorry. Now Daniel did turn around, looked Webb in the eye. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry 2 helicopters had to land in your parking lot because you fired the wrong person. But you're not sorry about what you did. You believed every word you said to me this morning. Webb opened his mouth, closed it. You know what the difference is between us? Daniel asked. I fix things that are broken. You break things that work. And then you wonder why everything falls apart. He turned back to the vessel. Webb walked away. Daniel finished the bypass in 8 more minutes. When he was done, he had a manual control rig that looked like something from a submarine, connected to the vessel's main propulsion system through a series of override cables. Morrison watched over his shoulder. That's remarkable. That's necessity. Daniel's hand hovered over the activation switch. Once I hit this, I've got 90 seconds to reboot the system manually before the lockout cascade triggers. If I miss the window, we're starting over from scratch, and you miss your mission window. Then don't miss. Daniel took a breath, hit the switch. Immediately, alarms started screaming. The vessel's systems went into emergency mode. Red lights flashed across every diagnostic panel. Daniel's hands flew across the manual controls, rerouting power, balancing fuel flow, overriding security protocols that tried to shut him down. 60 seconds. The alarms got louder. Someone in the crowd swore. 45 seconds. Daniel's face was calm, focused. This was what he did. This was who he was. 30 seconds. The propulsion system started cycling up. Power flow stabilizing. Control module accepting commands. 15 seconds. Daniel input the final override sequence, a string of codes he'd memorized 20 years ago in a Navy training facility. 5 seconds. The alarm stopped. The systems came online. Green lights across every panel. Daniel let out a breath and stepped back. Morrison checked his own readouts, looked at Daniel. It's operational. It's more than operational. It's optimized. You'll get an extra 6% efficiency on the drive system. How? Because I don't just fix things. I make them better. Morrison extended his hand. Thank you, Chief. Daniel shook it. Just doing the job, the way it's supposed to be done. The crew on the vessel started running pre-launch checks. Morrison coordinated with his officers. The mission was back on. Tommy approached Daniel. That was incredible. That was training, experience, and giving a damn about doing it right. Think they learned anything? Tommy gestured toward the facility, toward Webb. Daniel packed up his tools. Some people learn. Some people just get better at making excuses. Morrison returned. My vessel's operational. My crew is ready. And you saved a mission that I can't even tell you about. He handed Daniel a tablet. Payments already processed. Contract fulfilled. Daniel looked at the number, nodded once. One more thing, Morrison said. I'm putting a note in the federal contractor database. Any facility that wants Navy work in this region will see that you're certified and recommended. You won't have trouble finding work. Appreciate that, Commander. Morrison boarded his vessel. Within minutes, it was pulling away from the dock, engines humming smoothly, all systems green. Daniel watched it go. The facility was still quiet, everyone staring at him. He picked up his toolbox. Webb appeared one more time. "Daniel, wait. We need to talk about your position here. About bringing you back." Daniel stopped, set down his toolbox, took 3 steps toward Webb, and then, in front of 47 witnesses, he said the words that would become legend in harbor facilities up and down the coast. "Mr. Webb, I appreciate the offer, but I don't work for people who don't know the difference between value and cost. You wanted efficiency? You got it. You fired the only man who could fix that vessel, and it cost you a Navy contract and your reputation. That's efficient, just not the way you planned." He picked up his toolbox, walked to his truck, and drove away. Behind him, Webb stood in the parking lot, watching his career crumble in real time. And somewhere overhead, a Black Hawk circled once in silent salute, before disappearing into the afternoon sky. Daniel's phone started ringing before he made it to the highway. He ignored it. It rang again, and again. By the time he pulled into his driveway, he'd received 11 calls, 14 text messages, and 3 voicemails. He didn't check any of them, just sat in his truck for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled, and tried to process what had just happened. 2 hours ago, he'd been fired. Now he had more money in his bank account than he'd seen in 6 months, a Navy commendation in his email, and a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. He grabbed his toolbox and went inside. The house was quiet. Emma and Liam were still at school. Wouldn't be home for another 2 hours. The silence felt good after the chaos of helicopters and emergency repairs, and telling his former boss exactly where he could shove his efficiency metrics. Daniel set his toolbox on the kitchen table, opened the fridge, grabbed a beer. His phone rang again. This time he looked at the caller ID. "Tommy." He answered. "Yeah?" "Daniel, holy shit, you need to see this." "See what?" "The video. Someone recorded the whole thing. The helicopters landing, Morrison walking into the coffee shop, you fixing the vessel, all of it. It's already got like 200,000 views." Daniel took a drink. "Good for them." "Good for them? Daniel, people are calling you a hero. They're calling Webb an idiot. The comments are insane. Someone even made a meme about firing the only guy who knows how to fix things." "Tommy, I don't care about memes. You should care about this. Maritime Solutions stock price just dropped 8%. Corporate is freaking out. Clients are calling, asking if it's true they fired their only advanced systems specialist." Daniel walked to the window, looked out at his small yard. The grass needed mowing. The fence needed a coat of paint. Normal things. Fixable things. "Let me ask you something," Daniel said. "Are you calling because you're worried about me, or because you want to know what happens next?" Tommy was quiet for a second. "Both, I guess." "Fair enough. What happens next is I drink this beer, pick up my kids from school, and figure out what I'm going to do with my life now that I don't have a job." "You're not coming back?" "Why would I?" "Because we need you. Because half the crew is talking about walking out if they don't fix this. Because Webb is probably getting fired, and someone needs to actually run that place." "Not my problem anymore." "Daniel, listen to me. I spent 15 years at that facility. 15 years doing the job right, while people who didn't know a camshaft from a crankshaft told me I was too slow. I'm done. Whatever happens there, it's not my fight." He hung up. The beer was cold, the house was quiet. For the first time in as long as he could remember, Daniel had nowhere he needed to be. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, It felt wrong. His phone rang again. Different number this time. He didn't recognize it. Hayes.
Mr. Hayes, this is Patricia Cardenas from Regional Maritime Operations. I'm calling on behalf of...
Let me stop you right there. If this is about coming back to work for Maritime Solutions, the answer is no.
Actually, sir, this is about a formal inquiry into operational safety violations at the facility. Your name came up in our investigation as someone who filed multiple safety reports that were ignored by management.
Daniel set down his beer. I filed reports. Nobody ignored them. They just decided profit was more important than safety. That's what we're investigating. We have 3 commercial captains who filed complaints about rushed repairs. We have internal emails showing that Mr. Webb overrode safety protocols on at least 7 occasions. And now we have a viral video showing that the facility couldn't handle a critical repair without calling back a man they'd just fired. What do you need from me? Your testimony, your records, anything that shows a pattern of prioritizing speed over safety. Daniel thought about it. Thought about all the times he'd argued with Webb. All the times he'd caught mistakes that could have killed people. All the times he'd been told to hurry up. I'll cooperate, he said. But I want something in return. We don't typically negotiate. I want mandatory safety certifications for all mechanics. I want independent safety audits. And I want a clause that says, any facility doing federal contract work has to maintain minimum expertise standards, not just warm bodies, actual qualified people. Cardenas was quiet for a moment. That's ambitious. That's necessary. You want my help shutting down dangerous operations? Fine. But I want to make sure it actually means something. I'll see what I can do. Can you come to our office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.? I'll be there. He hung up and finished his beer. Outside, a car pulled up. Not just any car. A black SUV with government plates. Daniel watched through the window as 2 people got out. A man and a woman, both wearing suits that screamed federal employee. They walked to his door. He opened it before they could knock. Mr. Hayes? The woman asked. I'm Agent Reeves. This is Agent Torres. We're with the Department of Defense Contractor Oversight Division. Busy day for visitors. May we come in? Daniel stepped aside. They sat in his living room. Reeves pulled out a tablet. Torres just watched Daniel with the kind of steady gaze that suggested he'd been doing this job for a very long time. We've reviewed your contract work this morning, Reeves said. The Navy vessel repair. Commander Morrison filed a commendation. Said you completed in 23 minutes what would have taken a certified Navy facility 3 hours minimum. It wasn't that complicated once you understood the system. That's exactly our point. You understood the system because you have specialized training that's extremely rare in the civilian sector. We ran a check. There are fewer than 30 people in the continental United States with your specific certification level. And we'd like to offer you a position as a federal contractor. Specialized marine systems. You'd work on call for critical repairs. Military vessels, Coast Guard, federal maritime operations. Premium pay, full benefits, and you'd never have to answer to someone like Marcus Webb again. Daniel looked at them. What's the catch? Torres spoke for the first time. The catch is, you'd be on call 24/7. When we need you, you drop everything and go. Could be midnight, could be Christmas, could be your kid's birthday. So I'd never see my kids. You'd see them less than you do now. Daniel shook his head. Then no. Thanks for the offer, but I've got 2 kids who need their dad around. More than the federal government needs another contractor. Reeves leaned forward. Mr. Hayes, with all respect, you were just fired from your job. This is a significant opportunity. It's a significant sacrifice.
And I'm done sacrificing time with my kids for people who don't appreciate what I do. The federal government appreciates. I'm sure they do. But appreciation doesn't tuck my daughter in at night. It doesn't help my son with his homework.
It doesn't show up to school plays and soccer games. Daniel stood up. I appreciate you coming here. I really do. But the answer is no. They left 5 minutes later. Daniel sat back down and stared at his phone. 15 missed calls now. Messages from people he hadn't heard from in years. Former Navy buddies, old classmates, someone from a news station wanting an interview. He turned the phone off. At 3:30, he picked up Emma and Liam from school. "Dad, why are you early?" Emma asked, suspicious. She was 14 and had developed a finely tuned radar for when something was wrong. "Can't a father pick up his kids?" "Not without a reason. What happened?" Liam climbed into the back seat, earbuds in, completely oblivious. Daniel pulled out of the parking lot. "I got fired today." Emma's eyes went wide. "What? Why?" "Because I was too good at my job, and it made someone look bad." "That's stupid." "Yeah, it was." "Are we going to be okay, like, money-wise?" Daniel glanced at her. 14 years old and already worrying about bills. He hated that she had to think about that. "We're going to be fine. Better than fine, actually. I made enough today to cover us for a few months while I figure things out." "How'd you make money if you got fired?" "Long story. Involves helicopters." "Helicopters?" "Navy helicopters. They needed someone who could fix something nobody else could fix." Emma stared at him. "Dad, you're being weird." "I'm being honest." They stopped for pizza on the way home, not because Emma had asked for emotional support food, but because Daniel needed to sit with his kids and remember why he'd made the choices he'd made. While they ate, his phone buzzed. Still off, but the vibration was insistent. He turned it back on. 17 new messages. One caught his attention, from a number with a corporate prefix. He opened it. "Mr. Hayes, this is Richard Castellano, Regional Director for Maritime Solutions Group. I need to speak with you urgently regarding your employment status. Please call me at your earliest convenience." Daniel showed Emma the message. "What do you think?" She read it. Earliest convenience means he wants something from you. Smart kid. You taught me to read between the lines. He called the number. Castellano answered on the first ring. "Mr. Hayes, thank you for calling back. I want to apologize personally for what happened this morning." "You're apologizing for Webb?" "I'm apologizing for a failure in our management structure that allowed someone like Mr. Webb to make unilateral decisions without proper oversight." That's a fancy way of saying he screwed up. He did screw up, significantly, and it's cost us 3 contracts in the last 6 hours. Captains who've worked with us for years are pulling their business because they don't trust that we value expertise anymore. Daniel took a bite of pizza, chewed, swallowed. "Still not my problem." "I'd like it to be. I'm offering you your position back, with a raise, 30% increase in base pay, full benefits, and a formal title. Senior Technical Consultant." "And I'd report to who? Webb?" "Webb has been placed on administrative leave, pending an investigation. You'd report directly to me." "Still no." Castellano sighed. "What would it take?" "You can't afford what it would take." "Try me." Daniel looked at his kids. Emma was watching him carefully. Liam was stealing pepperoni off her plate. "Independent contractor status," Daniel said. "I work when I want, on jobs I choose. I have full authority to stop any job that doesn't meet safety standards. No one overrides my decisions on technical matters. And I want a formal apprenticeship program funded by the company. Real training, Not just videos and manuals. Hands-on mentoring for the next generation. That's asking a lot. That's asking for what should have been standard practice all along. Castellano was quiet. Daniel could hear him typing, talking to someone in the background. "Give me 24 hours, Castellano said finally. "I need to run this past corporate, but I think we can make something work." "You've got 12 hours. After that, I'm exploring other options." 12? That's not enough time to— 12 hours, Mr. Castellano. I've gotten 3 job offers in the last 4 hours. Yours isn't special, but it could be if you move fast and commit to real change. He hung up. Emma grinned. That was cold. That was business. You learned that today, didn't you? Maybe I did. They finished dinner, went home. Daniel helped Liam with math homework that made absolutely no sense to either of them, but they figured it out together. He listened to Emma practice a speech she was giving in English class about integrity in leadership. The irony wasn't lost on him. At 9 p.m., his phone rang. Castellano. "We've reviewed your terms. Corporate approved everything except the independent contractor status. They want you as a full employee with equity options." "No. Mr. Hayes, you heard me. Independent contractor or nothing. I'm not putting myself back in a position where someone like Webb can decide my expertise doesn't matter because it doesn't fit a spreadsheet. The equity package is substantial. We're talking about significant financial security. I don't need financial security. I need the freedom to do the job right without someone breathing down my neck about metrics that don't measure what matters." More typing, more background conversation. "All right," Castellano said. "Independent contractor. But we need a commitment. Minimum hours per month. First priority on critical jobs. 20 hours a month minimum. I'll take critical jobs during business hours. Emergencies after hours get triple rate." "That's expensive." "That's fair. You're not just paying for my time. You're paying for 20 years of experience and certifications that cost you nothing to acquire." "Deal. I'll have contracts drawn up by tomorrow morning." "One more thing." "What now?" "Tommy Chen, the kid who helped today. I want him in the apprenticeship program. Paid training. He's got potential." "Fine. Anything else?" "Yeah. Webb doesn't come back. Not to my facility. Not in any capacity where he can affect safety decisions. He's being terminated. Was going to happen anyway after the investigation findings." "Good. Then we have a deal." Daniel hung up and looked at his kids. They were both staring at him. "Did you just negotiate yourself a better job than you had this morning?" Emma asked. "I negotiated the job I should have had all along." "By getting fired?" "Sometimes you have to break before you can rebuild properly." Liam, who'd been quiet this whole time, finally spoke up. "Dad, are we still getting pizza for dinner tomorrow?" Daniel laughed. "Yeah, buddy, we're still getting pizza." That night, after his kids were asleep, Daniel sat on his back porch and watched the stars. His phone was off again. The contracts would come tomorrow. The new job would start next week. The apprenticeship program would take months to build properly. But for right now, in this moment, he was just a man who'd stood up for what he believed in, and somehow come out the other side better than he'd started. His father's toolbox sat next to him. 38 years old, scratched initials. Tools that had fixed 1,000 things. "A man who can fix things will never be useless," his father had said. Turned out he was right. Just took a couple of Blackhawks and a fired mechanic to prove it. The contracts arrived at 6 a.m. Daniel was already awake, coffee in hand, reading through the terms on his laptop, when his phone buzzed with the email. 237 pages of legal language that boiled down to what he'd negotiated the night before. Independent contractor. Full technical authority. Apprenticeship program. Triple rate for emergencies. He signed them electronically and sent them back before his kids woke up. By 7:30, his phone was ringing again. Castellano. You read through all of that already? Didn't need to read all of it. I know what I agreed to. Question is whether you're going to honor it. We will. But I need you to understand something. The board approved this because they're terrified. We've lost 6 contracts in 36 hours. The video has 4 million views. We're getting calls from facilities up and down the coast asking if it's true we fired our best mechanic over efficiency metrics. Good. Maybe they'll learn something. Maybe. But right now, I need you to help me fix this. Can you come in today? Daniel looked at the clock. Emma and Liam were still asleep. School didn't start for another hour. I can be there by 9. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You're not going to like everything I have to say. He hung up and made breakfast. Scrambled eggs and toast. Simple. By the time his kids came downstairs, everything was ready. Emma eyed him suspiciously. You're in a good mood? I'm employed again. Sort of. Sort of? I work for them. They don't own me. Big difference. Liam dumped hot sauce on his eggs without tasting them first. The kid had Daniel's taste buds. Everything needed heat. Dad, can Marcus come over after school? Liam asked. Which Marcus? From my class. We're working on a science project. Daniel paused. Not Marcus from work? No, why would Marcus from your work come here? No reason. Yeah, your friend can come over. After he dropped them at school, Daniel drove to the harbor. The facility looked the same as always from the outside. Same chain-link fence, same peeling paint on the office building, same parking lot with oil stains that had been there since before he was hired. But something felt different. He parked his truck and walked through the gate. Security guard nodded. Morning, Mr. Hayes. They're expecting you. Mr. Hayes, not just Hayes. The title felt strange. The main floor was busy with morning shift, workers prepping for the day, equipment being moved, the usual organized chaos of a harbor facility coming to life. But when Daniel walked in, everything stopped. 47 workers, all of them looking at him. Tommy was the first to move, walked right up and stuck out his hand. Welcome back. Daniel shook it. I'm not back. I'm just here. Semantics. Important semantics. An older mechanic named Rodriguez approached. Hayes, what you did yesterday, that took guts. That took helicopters. Still, you stood up to Webb. You showed us all that expertise matters more than spreadsheets. Half the guys here are talking about doing the same thing if management tries to cut corners again. Don't quit your jobs because of me. We're not quitting. We're just remembering what we're worth. Castellano appeared from the office, suit and tie, corporate polish. But his eyes had dark circles that suggested he hadn't slept much. Hayes, my office. Daniel followed him. The office was exactly what he expected. Glass walls, ergonomic furniture, multiple monitors displaying metrics that probably didn't mean anything useful. Castellano sat behind a desk that looked like it cost more than Daniel's truck. Coffee? Castellano offered. Already had some. Suit yourself. Castellano pulled up a presentation on one of his monitors. I want to show you what we're dealing with. This is our client retention data from the last 48 hours. The graph showed a cliff. Sharp drop. Red numbers everywhere. 6 major contracts canceled. 3 more on hold, pending safety reviews. Our insurance carrier is doing an emergency audit, and the Regional Maritime Board has opened a formal investigation into our safety protocols. You brought this on yourself. I know that, but I need your help fixing it. I'm not a PR consultant. No, But you're the only person those captains will trust right now. They saw the video. They saw you fix in 20 minutes what our whole team couldn't touch. They want to know you're here, that things are changing. Daniel leaned back in his chair. What are you really asking? I'm asking you to be the face of our new safety initiative. Talk to the captains. Show them we're serious about expertise over speed. Help me rebuild trust. And the apprenticeship program? Fully funded. You'll have 3 junior mechanics assigned to you starting next week. Tommy Chen is first on the list, like you requested. I want final say on curriculum. No corporate training modules. No videos about teamwork and synergy. Real hands-on work. Agreed. And I want quarterly safety reviews. Independent auditors, not internal people who can be pressured to fudge results. The board approved that this morning. Daniel studied Castellano. The man looked exhausted, desperate, but also genuine. You really want to change things. I have to. If I don't, this facility closes in 6 months and 300 people lose their jobs. Castellano ran a hand through his hair. I've been in corporate management for 12 years. I've seen a lot of facilities. Most of them are run exactly like this one was. Speed over safety, metrics over expertise. And most of them fail eventually because you can't build quality on a foundation of shortcuts. So why did you let Webb do what he did? Because I trusted him. He had an MBA. He had experience at Fortune 500 companies. On paper, he was perfect for the job. Castellano shook his head. I forgot that paper doesn't fix engines. People do. You're learning. I'm trying to. Will you help me? Daniel thought about it. Thought about walking away. Thought about taking one of those other offers. Federal contractor. High-end consulting. Easy money. Then he thought about Tommy. About Rodriguez. About 47 workers who deserved to work in a place that valued what they knew instead of how fast they could pretend to know it. I'll help, but on my terms. I talk to the captains, but I'm honest with them. If they ask me if this place is safe, I tell them the truth. If we're not there yet, I say so. Fair enough. And the apprenticeship program starts this week, not next week, this week. That's fast. That's necessary. You want to show people you're serious? Show them you're investing in the future right now. Not after the investigation, not after the PR crisis. Now. Castellano nodded slowly. All right. This week. But you're running it. I'll provide resources, but the program is yours. They shook hands. Daniel walked back out to the main floor. Workers were watching through the glass walls. He could see them speculating about what was happening. He found Tommy near Station 7. The kid was running diagnostics on a commercial fishing boat. Doing it right. Taking his time. You got a minute? Daniel asked. Tommy set down his tools. Yeah, what's up? You're in the apprenticeship program. Starts tomorrow. Tommy's eyes went wide. Seriously? Seriously. But it's not going to be easy. I'm going to teach you everything I know, and that means you're going to make mistakes. Lots of them. And I'm going to make you fix every single one until you understand why it was wrong. I can handle that. We'll see. First lesson starts at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Bring coffee. 6 a.m.? The ocean doesn't care if you're tired. Neither do I. Tommy grinned. Yes, sir. Daniel spent the rest of the morning talking to captains. 7 of them came in to assess whether they wanted to keep working with the facility. He met them in a conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. Captain Morrison showed up first. Not the Navy commander. Different Morrison. Ran a commercial trawler called the Lucky Strike. 62 years old. Weathered face. Hands like leather. Hayes, Morrison said. They drag you back? More like I dragged myself back, with conditions. What kind of conditions? The kind that mean your boat gets fixed right, every time. No shortcuts, no rushing. No junior mechanic telling you a stress fracture is probably fine. Morrison sat down heavily. I pulled my contract yesterday, after I saw that video. After I realized that young punk Webb fired the only man in this facility who actually knows what he's doing. Webb's gone. Won't be back. That's a start, but I need more than that. I need to know that when I bring my boat in, it's going to be safe when it leaves. Daniel pulled out a tablet, showed him the new protocols. Independent safety audits, mandatory expertise standards, the apprenticeship program. Morrison read through it all, took his time, finally looked up. This is what it should have been all along. Yeah, it is. You're running this? I'm overseeing the technical side, the safety side, the side that matters. Then I'm back in. But Hayes, if this goes sideways, if they slide back to the old ways, I'm done. For good. Understood. They shook hands. 5 more captains followed. Same conversation, same concerns, same cautious optimism when Daniel explained the changes. The last captain was a woman named Sarah Chen. No relation to Tommy, but she ran a cargo vessel that did regular Pacific routes. Sharp, direct, didn't waste words. I've been using this facility for 8 years, she said. Never had a problem until 6 months ago. Since Webb took over, I've had 3 separate repairs that had to be redone. 3. That's 3 times I risked my crew because someone was more worried about turnaround time than about whether the work was actually finished. Won't happen again. How do I know that? Because I won't let it. I've got full technical authority now. A job doesn't leave my hands until it's done right. And if management doesn't like it, they can fire me again. Except this time, I've got a contract that says they pay me whether I work or not. Sarah almost smiled. That's a hell of a contract. That's a hell of a lesson about what happens when you fire the wrong person. She signed back on. By noon, 5 of the 7 captains had renewed their contracts. The other 2 wanted to wait and see results. Fair enough. Daniel grabbed lunch from the food truck that parked outside the facility every day. Same truck that had been there for years. Run by a guy named Miguel, who made the best carnitas in the county. "Hayes," Miguel called out when he saw him. "You're famous, man." My daughter showed me the video. 4 million views. You're like a celebrity. I'm a mechanic. You're a mechanic who stood up to the man and won. That's different. Daniel paid for his food and sat on a bench outside the facility. Ate in silence, while watching boats come and go from the harbor. Normal day, normal work. Except nothing was normal anymore. His phone buzzed. Text from Emma. "Dad, my friend says you're on TikTok. Please tell me you're not on TikTok." He typed back, "I'm not on TikTok. Someone else put me on TikTok." Emma. "That's worse. Are you going to be one of those embarrassing dads?" Daniel. "I've always been an embarrassing dad. This just makes it official." Emma. "Fair point. Love you anyway." He smiled and put the phone away. That afternoon, he started building the apprenticeship program. Not the paperwork, not the official curriculum, the actual teaching. He pulled Tommy aside first. "Bring those 2 guys from Station 4, the ones who were struggling with the hydraulic rebuild yesterday." Tommy brought them over, both young, early 20s, eager but underskilled. "Names?" Daniel asked. "Jason." "Marcus." Daniel paused. "Your parents name you after a manager they hated?" Marcus looked confused. "No, sir, just Marcus." "All right, here's how this works. I'm going to show you how to properly diagnose a hydraulic system. Not by reading codes, not by guessing, by understanding what the system is supposed to do and figuring out why it's not doing it. He led them to a workstation where a hydraulic pump sat in pieces. "What's wrong with this?" Jason looked at it. "The pressure's too low?" "That's a symptom. What's the cause?" Bad seal?" "Maybe. How do you know?" Silence. "You don't know," Daniel said, "because you're guessing. And guessing kills people at sea. So let's learn how to actually know." He spent the next 2 hours teaching them how to trace hydraulic flow, how to read pressure differentials, how to identify wear patterns that indicated specific failures. It was tedious, detailed, the kind of teaching that couldn't be rushed. Exactly what they needed. By the end of the day, both of them could diagnose the pump failure correctly. Not by guessing, by knowing. Tommy stayed late. "That was incredible. I've never seen anyone teach like that." "That's because most people teach theory. I teach reality." "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why are you doing this? The apprenticeship program, the safety reviews. You could have taken that federal contractor job and made twice the money." Daniel packed up his tools. "You know what my daughter asked me once? She was 9. She asked me why I fixed boats instead of being a doctor, or a lawyer, or something important." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that doctors fix people, and lawyers fix problems. But mechanics fix the things that keep people alive. A boat that's fixed right brings a crew home safely. A boat that's fixed wrong becomes a coffin." Daniel closed his toolbox. "That's why I'm doing this. Because the next generation needs to understand that what we do matters. Not because it's impressive, because it's necessary." Tommy nodded slowly. "My dad's a lawyer. Makes good money. Hates his job. Tells me I should go to college, get a degree, avoid manual labor." "What do you tell him?" "I tell him I'd rather fix things than argue about them." Daniel smiled. "Smart kid. Your dad teach you that?" "No, you did." They walked out together. The sun was setting over the harbor, orange and red reflecting off the water. Boats silhouetted against the sky. 6 a.m. tomorrow, Daniel reminded him. "I'll be here. Bring the other two, Jason and Marcus. They need the work. They're not officially in the program yet." "They are now. I just decided." Daniel drove home, thinking about what he'd started. The apprenticeship program wasn't just about teaching mechanics. It was about changing culture, about proving that expertise mattered more than speed, about building something that would last after he was gone. His phone rang. Castellano. "Hayes, the board wants to meet you. Tomorrow. They want to hear your plan for the apprenticeship program directly." "Tell them no." "Excuse me?" "Tell them no. I don't present to boards. I teach mechanics. They want to know what I'm doing. They can read the reports." "Hayes, these are the people who approved your contract. And I appreciate that. But I'm not a performer. I'm not going to stand in front of a room full of executives and explain why safety matters. They should already know that. If they don't, that's a bigger problem than I can fix." Castellano sighed. "You're not making this easy." "I'm making it right. There's a difference." He hung up and pulled into his driveway. Both kids were home. Lights on in the kitchen. Homework spread across the table. Normal. Real. Important. Emma looked up when he walked in. "So, are you famous now?" "I'm employed. That's different." "The internet thinks you're famous." "The internet thinks a lot of things. Doesn't make them true." Liam didn't even look up from his math homework. "Dad, what's a variable?" "Something that changes based on conditions." "Like your job?" Daniel laughed. "Yeah, buddy, exactly like my job." That night, after his kids were asleep, Daniel sat at the kitchen table and wrote out the curriculum for the apprenticeship program. Not corporate language, not buzzwords and learning objectives, just real skills, real knowledge, the things that mattered. Week 1. Diagnostic fundamentals. Understanding systems instead of memorizing codes. Week 2. Safety protocols. Why they exist and what happens when you skip them. Week 3. Hydraulics and pneumatics. The unsexy stuff that keeps boats running. Week 4. Advanced troubleshooting. The art of finding problems that don't show up on screens. He kept writing until midnight. By the time he was done, he had a 12-week program that would produce mechanics who actually knew what they were doing. Not fast mechanics, good mechanics. His phone buzzed one more time. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Hayes, this is Commander Morrison. The vessel you repaired is performing above specifications. Crew sends their thanks. You saved more than a mission that day. J. Morrison, USN. Daniel read it twice. Then he turned off his phone and went to bed. Tomorrow started at 6 a.m. And for the first time in 15 years, he was actually looking forward to it. 6 months later, Daniel stood in the training bay, watching Tommy explain propulsion system diagnostics to 3 junior mechanics who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The flow rate calculation isn't optional, Tommy was saying. You can't guess. You can't approximate. You measure, you calculate, you verify. Anyone tells you different, you walk away from that job. One of the juniors, a kid named Derek, raised his hand. But the manual says we can use the standard formula. The manual assumes ideal conditions. When's the last time you saw ideal conditions on a 30-year-old fishing trawler? Derek didn't have an answer. Tommy looked at Daniel. You want to field this one? Daniel walked over. Derek, let me ask you something. You ever cook? Yeah. You follow recipes exactly? Every ingredient measured to the gram? Every temperature precise? No, I adjust based on what I'm making. Why? Because every kitchen's different. Every stove heats differently. Exactly. The manual is a recipe, but you're not cooking in a test kitchen. You're working on vessels that have been modified, repaired, rebuilt, and jury-rigged for decades. The standard formula might work, or it might get someone killed. So you measure, every time. Derek nodded slowly. That makes sense. Good. Now run the calculation again. Show me your work. The training bay had been Daniel's project from day one. Not a classroom, not a conference room with a projector. An actual working space where apprentices learned by doing, making mistakes, fixing them, understanding why they mattered. Tommy had graduated from the program 2 months ago. Now he was teaching the next group, passing it forward. Daniel's phone buzzed. Text from Emma. Dad, parent-teacher conference is at 3. Don't forget. He typed back. Wouldn't miss it. How much trouble are you in? Emma. None. I'm perfect. Liam, on the other hand. Daniel smiled. Liam had been struggling with his grades lately. Not because he couldn't do the work, but because he'd rather take things apart and figure out how they worked than sit still and memorize facts. The kid was 12 years old and already thinking like a mechanic. Hayes. Castellano appeared in the doorway. 6 months had been good to him. He'd lost the corporate polish, started wearing shirts without ties, spent more time on the floor than in his office. Got a minute? They walked to the main floor. The facility had changed. Not dramatically, not overnight, but gradually, deliberately. Station 7 wasn't the slowest anymore. It was the standard. Every station now took the time to do jobs right. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, overall completion times had actually improved. because they stopped having to redo failed work. Regional Maritime Board finished their investigation, Castellano said. Final report came through this morning. And? Clean bill. Recommended us as a model facility for safety protocols. They're actually using our apprenticeship program as a template for new regulations. Daniel absorbed that. Webb's name come up? Extensively. They found 14 separate instances where he overrode safety protocols. Could have resulted in criminal charges, but he agreed to surrender his certification and never work in maritime management again. Where is he now? Last I heard, selling insurance in Phoenix, far from any ocean. Good. Man like that shouldn't be anywhere near boats. They stood there watching the floor. Rodriguez was training a new hire on welding techniques. Jason and Marcus were working together on a hydraulic rebuild, taking their time, doing it right. The whole culture had shifted. You know what's funny? Castellano said. Our profit margins are actually higher than they were under Webb. That's not funny. That's predictable. How do you figure? Because you're not redoing jobs. You're not losing contracts because captains don't trust you. You're not paying insurance premiums through the roof because of safety violations. Turns out quality is profitable. Who knew? Castellano laughed. Corporate still doesn't quite believe it. They keep asking me to explain the metrics. Tell them the metric is simple. We fix boats right. Boats don't sink. Captains keep coming back. I've tried. They want something they can put in a PowerPoint. Then put that in a PowerPoint. One slide. Big letters. We don't kill people. End of presentation. Daniel's phone rang. He checked the caller ID. Didn't recognize the number, but it had a Washington, D.C. area code. Hayes. Mr. Hayes, this is Admiral Patricia Vance, Naval Sea Systems Command. Do you have a few minutes? Daniel walked outside for better reception. Yes, ma'am. What can I do for you? Commander Morrison speaks very highly of you, as do several other officers whose vessels you've worked on through our contract system. I'm calling because we're establishing a new civilian technical advisory board. We need experts who understand both military and commercial marine systems. Your name keeps coming up. Admiral, with respect, I'm not a committee person. I'm not asking you to sit in meetings. I'm asking you to review critical system designs before they go operational. Flag potential issues. Provide real-world perspective that our engineers might miss. 4 times a year. 2 days each. Significant compensation. How significant? She named a number. Daniel almost dropped his phone. That's for 8 days of work? That's for expertise that prevents billion-dollar vessels from having preventable failures. We've run the analysis. Every modification you've recommended has improved operational performance. You see things other people miss. I've got 2 kids. I can't travel constantly. The reviews are done remotely. Video conference. You'd only need to travel if a critical issue emerged that required hands-on assessment. Maybe twice a year. Daniel thought about it. Thought about Emma's college fund. Thought about Liam's future. Thought about having financial security that didn't depend on whether a facility kept his contract. I'll do it, but I need flexibility on scheduling. My kids come first. Understood. Welcome to the board, Mr. Hayes. Paperwork will arrive by end of week. She hung up. Daniel stood there for a moment, watching boats move through the harbor. 6 months ago, he'd been fired for being too slow. Now, he was advising the Navy on system designs. The universe had a strange sense of humor. When he went back inside, Tommy was wrapping up the training session. All right, that's it for today. Derek, I want you to run those calculations again tonight. Practice until you can do them in your sleep. Jason, Marcus, good work on the hydraulic rebuild. Hayes is going to inspect it tomorrow, so make sure you're ready to explain every decision you made." The apprentices filed out. Tommy stayed behind. "You heard about the Maritime Board report?" Tommy asked. "Just did. Sounds like we're famous." "We're legitimate. There's a difference. When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." Tommy paused. "There's something else. I got an offer. West Coast facility, management track, good money." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. "That's great, Tommy. Really. I haven't accepted yet." "Why not?" "Because I don't want to be a manager. I want to be a mechanic. I want to teach people the way you taught me. I want to keep building this program." "You can do that anywhere." "Not like here. Here it means something. Here we're changing how things work." Tommy looked around the training bay. "My dad called last week. Said I'm wasting my potential. Said I should use my skills to climb the ladder, make real money, get a corner office." "What did you tell him?" "I told him I don't want a corner office. I want to fix things. I want to train people who fix things. I want to go home knowing I did something that mattered." Daniel put a hand on the kid's shoulder. "Then you're exactly where you need to be." "Yeah?" "Yeah. And for what it's worth, you're already making real money. Just not the kind your dad measures." Tommy smiled. "Thanks, Hayes." "Don't thank me. Just keep teaching. Keep passing it forward. That's how this works." At 3 p.m., Daniel left the facility and drove to Emma's school. The parent-teacher conference was in the main office. Emma was waiting outside, looking nervous. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, Mrs. Patterson wants to talk to you about something." "You in trouble?" "No, the opposite, I think." They walked in together. Mrs. Patterson was a veteran teacher, 30 years in the classroom. She'd seen everything. "Mr. Hayes, thank you for coming. Emma, why don't you wait outside for a moment?" Emma left reluctantly. Mrs. Patterson gestured to a chair. "I wanted to talk to you about Emma's recent essays, particularly the one about integrity in leadership." "She's been working on that. I helped her practice." "I know. She mentioned you in the essay, about what happened at your work, about standing up for what you believed was right, even when it cost you your job." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "That's not really about leadership. That's just about doing the job right." "Mr. Hayes, your daughter wrote the most compelling essay I've read in 15 years of teaching. She didn't write about presidents or CEOs or famous activists. She wrote about her father, about watching you get fired for refusing to compromise on safety, about seeing you negotiate your way back on your own terms, about learning that integrity isn't just about being honest. It's about having the courage to stand alone when necessary." Daniel didn't know what to say. "She's exceptional, Mr. Hayes. Brilliant. And she's that way because she has a father who shows her every day that principles matter more than paychecks." Mrs. Patterson handed him a paper. "This is a recommendation letter for the Coastal Scholars Program. Full scholarship, leadership track. If she gets in, her entire college education is covered." Daniel read the letter. It was glowing. It made Emma sound like a future president. "She doesn't know I'm submitting this," Mrs. Patterson continued, "but I wanted you to know. Because whether she gets the scholarship or not, you're raising a young woman who understands what real leadership looks like. And that's worth more than any award." Daniel's throat felt tight. "Thank you." "No, Mr. Hayes, thank you. The world needs more people like you. And more importantly, it needs more young people like Emma, who learn from examples like yours." When he walked out, Emma was pacing in the hallway. "Am I in trouble?" she asked immediately. "No, the opposite." "What does that mean?" It means you wrote something that mattered, and your teacher thinks you're going places. Emma's eyes got wide. The scholarship? She told you?
She hinted. Dad, that's a full ride. That's college paid for. That's everything.
You earned it.
No, you earned it. I just wrote about what you did.
Daniel hugged his daughter. We both earned it. You for being brilliant, me for trying not to screw you up too badly. She laughed through tears.
You're not screwing me up. You're showing me how to be a person.
They picked up Liam from middle school. The kid was in the principal's office. Again. What happened this time? Daniel asked. The principal, a tired-looking man named Mr. Chen, sighed. Liam took apart the pencil sharpener during class to see how the gears worked. Did he put it back together?
Yes, and it works better than it did before, but that's not the point.
What is the point?
The point is he needs to ask permission before dismantling school property.
Daniel looked at his son. You understand that?
Liam nodded. Yes, sir. Sorry, Mr. Chen.
Apology accepted. Just ask next time. In the car, Emma turned to her brother.
You're such a weirdo.
Takes one to know one.
That doesn't even make sense.
Your face doesn't make sense. Daniel interrupted. Both of you, knock it off. Emma, you're brilliant and probably going to college for free. Liam, you're a weirdo who's going to be a great mechanic someday. Everyone's winning. They stopped for pizza. The same place they always went. The owner knew their order by heart. While they ate, Daniel's phone buzzed. Email notification. Subject line: Facility of the Year nomination. Maritime Solutions Group. He opened it, read through it. Apparently, the Regional Maritime Association had nominated them based on safety improvements, client retention, and the apprenticeship program. Good news? Emma asked. Work stuff. They're nominating the facility for an award. That's because of you. That's because of a lot of people. I just helped push it in the right direction.
Dad, you got fired and came back better. You changed the whole place. That's not just pushing. That's transforming.
Daniel looked at his daughter, 14 years old and already wiser than most adults. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just started paying attention. Liam piped up through a mouthful of pepperoni. Can we get dessert? You already had dessert for lunch. That was 6 hours ago. That was 4 hours ago. Time is relative. Emma rolled her eyes. You don't even know what that means. Neither do you. Daniel let them bicker. It was normal. It was real. It was everything that mattered. Later that night, after his kids were asleep, Daniel sat on his back porch with a beer and his father's toolbox. He'd been thinking about something all day. About legacy. About what he was building. His phone rang. Late call. He almost didn't answer, but it was Rodriguez from the facility. Hayes, sorry to call late. We got a situation. Captain Morrison's trawler just limped into port. Engine failure. He's asking for you specifically. Daniel checked the time. 10:30 p.m. Emergency? Vessel's stable, but Morrison says he won't let anyone else touch it. Says, after everything that happened, he only trusts you. Tell him I'll be there in 20 minutes. He left a note for Emma. She was old enough to watch Liam if they woke up. Old enough to call him if there was an emergency. The facility was quiet when he arrived. Night shift skeleton crew. Rodriguez met him at the gate. Morrison's with his vessel. He's pretty shaken up. Said the engine started making a noise he'd never heard before. Shut it down immediately. Nursed it back to port on auxiliary power. Daniel grabbed his toolbox and walked to the dock. Morrison was sitting on the deck of his boat, the Lucky Strike, 38 years old.
Morrison had been running her for 20 of those years. "Captain," Daniel greeted him. Morrison looked up.
Hires washed across his face. "Hayes, thank God. I didn't know who else to call." "What happened?" "I don't know. That's what scares me. I know this engine better than I know my own house. Every sound, every vibration. And tonight, I heard something I've never heard before. Like metal grinding, but deeper. Wrong."
Daniel climbed aboard. "Show me." They went below. The engine room was clean, well maintained. Morrison took care of his equipment. Daniel listened, felt the engine casing with his hands, checked the oil, ran basic diagnostics. Then he found it. A hairline crack in the engine mount, barely visible. The kind of thing that could turn catastrophic in the wrong conditions. "Captain, when's the last time you had a full structural inspection?"
6 months ago, right before all that business with Webb."
"Who did the work?" Morrison pulled out his log, checked. His face went pale.
"Webb authorized it. Junior mechanic I didn't recognize. Signed off on it personally." Daniel examined the crack more carefully. "This has been developing for months. The inspection should have caught it. Should have replaced this mount immediately." "But Webb was rushing everyone." "Yeah, he was." Daniel stood up. "Captain, I need to pull this engine. Complete teardown. Check every mount, every seal, every connection. If this crack is here, there might be others." "How long?" 3 days, maybe 4. I'm not rushing this." Morrison's face fell. "I've got a contract deadline. If I miss it, I lose the client." "If this crack fails at sea, you lose your boat. Maybe your life. Maybe your crew's lives. Which one matters more?" Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Do what you need to do. I'll start tomorrow, first thing." "Hayes, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why'd you come down here at 10:30 at night? You could have told Rodriguez to handle it. You could have said you'd look at it in the morning." Daniel picked up his toolbox. "Because you asked for me specifically. Because you trusted me with something you love. And because if I'm going to build a culture where expertise matters, I have to live it, not just preach it." Morrison extended his hand. "You're a good man, Hayes." "I'm a mechanic. There's a difference." "Not much of one." Daniel drove home, thinking about that crack, about how close Morrison had come to disaster, about how Webb's corner cutting almost killed someone 6 months after he'd been fired. The consequences of carelessness had long tails. When he got home, Emma was waiting up. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just had to check on a boat." "At midnight?" "At 10:30, but yeah." "Dad, you know you don't have to save everyone, right?" "I'm not saving anyone. I'm just doing the job." Emma looked at him with those eyes that saw through everything. "You're building something. The apprenticeship program, the safety protocols. Coming out at midnight to help a captain who trusts you. You're not just doing a job. You're changing how things work." "When did you become so observant?" "I've always been observant. You just started listening." She went to bed. Daniel sat in the kitchen with the lights off, thinking about his daughter's words. He wasn't trying to change the world. He was just trying to make sure boats didn't sink. But maybe that was changing the world, one vessel at a time. The next morning, he brought Tommy and the apprentices to work on Morrison's engine. Made it a teaching moment. Showed them how a missed inspection almost became a catastrophe. How rushing through safety checks wasn't just inefficient, it was deadly. Derek, the junior who'd questioned the manual 6 months ago,
found the second crack. Smaller, earlier stage, but there. "I found something," Derek said quietly. Daniel came over, looked, nodded. "Good eye. What do we do about it?" "Replace the mount. Check all the others. Run stress tests to make sure there's no underlying structural issues." "Why?" "Because this boat carries 3 crew members, and their lives depend on us doing this right." Daniel smiled. "Exactly. Get started." The work took 4 days, not 3. They found a third crack, replaced all the mounts, rebuilt the support structure, ran every test twice. When Morrison came back to collect his boat, Daniel walked him through everything they'd found, everything they'd fixed, everything they'd tested. "That'll be expensive," Morrison said. "It'll be fair, and it'll be right." Morrison looked at his boat, at the engine that had almost killed him. "You know what I told my wife last night? I told her I was glad Webb fired you." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Because if he hadn't, you wouldn't have come back on your terms. You wouldn't have built this program. You wouldn't have changed this place." Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that could have happened. Morrison shook his hand. "Thank you for saving my life, Hayes. Thank you for trusting me with it." That night, the facility held a small ceremony. Nothing fancy, just the crew gathering after shift to acknowledge something important. Castellano stood on a makeshift platform near the main floor. "6 months ago, this facility was heading toward closure. We'd lost our reputation. We'd lost our clients. We'd lost our way. And then something happened that seemed like a disaster, but turned out to be a gift. We fired the best mechanic we had." People laughed. "And that mechanic," Castellano continued, "could have walked away, could have taken better offers, could have told us exactly where we could shove our efficiency metrics. Instead, he came back, on his terms. And he didn't just fix boats, he fixed us." He gestured to Daniel. "Come up here." Daniel shook his head. "I'm good."
"Get up here, Hayes."
Reluctantly, Daniel walked to the platform. Castellano handed him a plaque. "From the Regional Maritime Association, Facility of the Year, and from all of us who work here, something more important." He pointed to the wall behind the time clock. A new sign had been installed. Brass letters on dark wood. "Excellence is the only metric that matters. Daniel Hayes, Senior Technical Consultant." The crew applauded. Daniel looked at that sign, at his name on the wall, at 47 people who'd learned to value expertise over speed. "I didn't do this alone," he said. "Tommy, Rodriguez, Jason, Marcus, Derek, every single person in this facility did this. I just reminded you that you already knew what mattered. You just needed permission to act on it." He stepped down. Tommy grabbed his arm. "That was a good speech." "That was terrible. I hate speeches." "Doesn't matter. They needed to hear it." Daniel drove home. Emma and Liam were doing homework at the kitchen table. "How was work?" Emma asked. "Got a plaque." "For what?" "For getting fired and coming back smarter." Liam looked up from his math. "That's possible?" "Apparently." "Cool. Can I try?" "No." Emma laughed. "Dad got an award for being stubborn." "That's not what it's for." "That's exactly what it's for. You refused to compromise. You got fired. You came back on your terms. You transformed an entire facility because you were too stubborn to accept that speed mattered more than safety." Daniel sat down at the table, looked at his kids, at Emma, who was probably going to college for free because she'd learned integrity from watching him, at Liam, who'd rather take things apart than memorize facts, because he'd learned that understanding mattered more than appearances.
You know what I learned? Daniel said. Getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because I deserved it, but because it forced me to decide what I was worth. And I decided I was worth more than a paycheck, worth more than metrics, worth the freedom to do the job right. That's in my essay, Emma said. I know, I stole it from you. She grinned. That weekend, Daniel took his kids to the harbor, showed them the facility, introduced them to the apprentices, let them see what he'd built. Emma watched Tommy teach a class and whispered to Daniel, "He's good." "Yeah, he is." "You taught him that." "I gave him permission. He did the work." Liam was more interested in the boats, wanted to know how every system worked, asked questions that would take hours to answer properly. "Can I work here someday?" Liam asked. "You can work anywhere you want, but if you work here, you'll do it right. No shortcuts, no rushing, no compromising safety for convenience. Like you. Like what you already know. You take apart pencil sharpeners because you want to understand how they work. That's the same instinct, just applied to bigger things that matter more." They ate lunch at the food truck. Miguel made extra tacos when he saw Daniel with his kids. "Your dad's famous," Miguel told him. "He's not famous," Emma corrected. "He's just good at his job." "Same thing these days." "No," Daniel said. "It's not. Fame is about attention. Expertise is about competence. One fades, one lasts." On Monday, Daniel got another call. The Maritime Association wanted him to speak at their annual conference, share the story of the facility's transformation. He said no. They offered to pay him. He still said no. They asked why. "Because this isn't a story about me. It's a story about what happens when you value the right things. You want to tell that story? Bring Tommy. Bring Rodriguez. Bring the apprentices who are learning that quality matters. But don't make it about one man who got fired and came back. Make it about a culture that remembered what it stood for." They brought Tommy instead. Daniel watched the speech on live stream from his living room. Tommy was nervous, but good. Talked about learning that expertise required patience, that safety required courage, that the best mechanics weren't the fastest. They were the ones who cared enough to do it right every time. The audience gave him a standing ovation. Emma sat next to Daniel on the couch. "You could have done that." "Tommy did it better." "Why?" "Because he's young enough that people will listen. I'm old enough that people will dismiss it as nostalgia. Tommy represents the future, and the future is always more compelling than the past." 6 months turned into a year. The apprenticeship program expanded, 10 mechanics now, all learning that expertise mattered more than speed. The facility's reputation spread. Captains came from 3 states away because they knew their boats would be fixed right. Webb never came back. Last Daniel heard, he'd failed at selling insurance, too. Turned out people didn't trust someone who'd built a career on cutting corners. Daniel's kids grew. Emma got the scholarship. Full ride to a top university. Leadership program. She was going to change the world in ways Daniel never could. Liam was still taking things apart, but now he was putting them back together better than they'd been before. The kid had Daniel's hands and his mother's brain. Dangerous combination. One evening, almost exactly a year after the helicopters landed, Daniel was closing up the training bay when Tommy approached. "Got a minute?" "Always." "I've been thinking about something. About what this program means. About what you built." "We built," Daniel corrected. "Fine, we built. But here's the thing. A year ago, you got fired for being too good at your job. And instead of walking away, instead of taking easier money somewhere else, you came back and changed the entire culture of this place.
You proved that expertise matters, that safety matters,
that doing things right is worth more than doing things fast. What's your point? My point is that what we built here needs to spread. Other facilities need this. The whole industry needs this. And I want to help make that happen. Daniel studied the kid. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we franchise the apprenticeship program. Offer it to other facilities. Train their mechanics the way we train ours. Build a network of people who understand that quality isn't negotiable. That's ambitious. That's necessary. How many Captain Morrisons are out there right now on boats with cracked engine mounts because some manager rushed an inspection? How many crews are at risk because nobody taught the mechanics to care about more than completion times? Daniel thought about it. About the crack that almost killed Morrison. About Webb's legacy of corner cutting that could still be killing people in facilities across the coast. All right, he said. Let's do it. But we do it right. No franchising fees. No profit motive. We charge enough to cover costs, and that's it. The goal isn't to make money. The goal is to prevent boats from sinking. Tommy grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. They spent the next 3 months building the program. Curriculum, training materials, certification standards, everything needed to replicate what they built. By the end of year 2, 17 facilities had adopted the program. By year 3, it was 42. The industry started changing, slowly, incrementally, but changing. Daniel never became famous, never wanted to be. He just kept teaching, kept fixing boats, kept showing up at midnight when Captain Morrison called, because that's what expertise meant, being there when you were needed. His kids grew up watching their father build something that mattered, not for profit, not for recognition, but because it was right. Emma went to college, studied engineering, came back summers to work in the training bay, said she wanted to understand the real-world applications of the theory she was learning. Liam started high school, still took things apart, started entering engineering competitions, won some, lost others, learned from both. And Daniel kept working, kept teaching, kept proving that the value of a person wasn't measured in how fast they worked, but in whether the work they did kept people alive. 5 years after the helicopters landed, Daniel stood in the same spot where Webb had fired him. The facility looked different now, not in structure, but in spirit. The culture had changed, the priorities had shifted. Excellence wasn't a buzzword, it was a standard. Castellano approached. He'd gone gray at the temples, looked distinguished. Hayes, got a minute? That's a dangerous question. I'm retiring. Board asked me to recommend my replacement. You recommending Tommy? I'm recommending you. Daniel laughed. No, why not? Because I'm not a manager. I'm a mechanic. There's a difference. You've been managing this entire transformation for 5 years. No, I've been teaching. There's a difference there, too. What do you want, Hayes? Daniel thought about it. About his kids, who were grown now. About Emma, who was changing the world in engineering firms. About Liam, who was going to be a better mechanic than Daniel ever was. I want to keep teaching. I want to keep the apprenticeship program growing. I want to make sure that 30 years from now, there are mechanics who understand that their job isn't just fixing engines, it's keeping people alive. That's a legacy. That's a responsibility. Castellano extended his hand. Then keep doing it. The facility is yours to run however you want. I'll handle the corporate nonsense. You handle the part that matters. They shook. That night, Daniel sat on his back porch with his father's toolbox, 38 years old when his father gave it to him. Now it was 43. The scratches were deeper. The tools were worn smooth from use. But they still worked. They'd always work. Because quality tools, properly maintained, lasted forever. Just like expertise. Just like integrity. Just like the lesson Daniel had learned when 2 helicopters landed in a parking lot and reminded him that his value wasn't determined by someone else's metrics. His phone buzzed. Text from Emma. "Dad, I just signed my first contract as a lead engineer. Thanks for teaching me that expertise matters more than speed." He typed back, "You taught yourself. I just didn't screw you up too badly." Emma. "That's not true. You showed me what integrity looks like. Every single day." Daniel looked at those words for a long time. Then he looked at the harbor, at the boats moving through the water, at the facility where 47 mechanics were learning that excellence was the only metric that mattered. And he understood something profound. Getting fired wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to him. It was the moment he stopped letting other people define his worth. It was the moment he remembered that expertise isn't measured by speed, but by the lives you save when you refuse to compromise. It was the moment he chose dignity over paychecks, principles over promotions, and the right way over the easy way. The helicopters didn't land because he was special. They landed because he was necessary. And there's a difference between those two things that matters more than any efficiency metric could ever measure. Daniel Hayes wasn't just a mechanic who got fired and came back. He was a man who proved that real value can't be deleted from a spreadsheet, that expertise can't be replaced by urgency, and that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is losing everything except your integrity. Because when you rebuild from that foundation, you don't just restore what was lost, you create something better than what existed before. He picked up his father's toolbox. Tomorrow started at 6 a.m., and he had a generation of mechanics to train. Not in how to work faster, but in how to work right. And that made all the difference.